You are watching Tech Confessions, created by Amy Lewis and brought to you by VMware.
Thanks for coming to the show, John.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So here on Tech Confessions, we like to learn when people had their software-defined moment. So when did you transition from thinking solely about hardware to thinking about software?
That is a cracking question. Absolutely cracking question. So I think it's when I first moved from networking to storage.
Oh,
so
wow.
I started my career amazingly as an engineer in the network world, network engineering for Nortel. And it's when I sort of moved from that world to moving into NetApp and moving into storage when I realized that my old world of fiber optics and SFPs and all of this sort of hardware-y stuff was really just moving towards a more software-defined approach. I didn't think of it as software-defined then. It was just more sort of software is more important than hardware, and probably from there onwards, really, I guess.
So how did you stay on trend? How were you able to make that transition? What kind of conversations would you have with customers that kind of reinforce that? How did you share that message back with people you were talking to who hadn't maybe made that transition?
Yeah, well, I don't think we called it sort of software defined back then. I think that came up somewhere around the start of VMworld, didn't it? I forget exactly when that was. The whole software defined thing. It always feels to me it came out of VMware.
Mm-hmm.
I've been coming to this show in EMEA for, I realised, 10 years this year,
goodness.
which is frankly scary. So yeah, but so I think we didn't think of it as software defined. It was just that shift from hardware is where I want to be focused to software is where I want to be focused. And I think that's because at the end of the day, people don't really care that much about the hardware.
And by people, I'm curious, so you're saying, so even though you've worked on that vendor side, from your perspective, customers wanted that software solutions, they wanted to not care about the hardware.
When I say people, the only important thing in our world,
yeah.
I mean, you and I working for vendors, are the customers. So, unless somebody's going to buy some of this stuff, nobody cares. So yeah, when I say people, I mean customers, end users, the people that take, our sort of clever widgets, hardware and software, and turn them into useful stuff. Really. Yeah.
So, put on that prognostication hat. Where do you think we'll go
did
from?
Did you just say prognostication?
I did.
I don't know what that means, but carry on.
Fortune telling.
All right. Okay.
Where do you think we're going from here? If we've made this transition, and I think that's an interesting timestamp when you talk about sort of the 10 years that you've transitioned. What would you say the next 10? Where do you think we're going if we're moving so rapidly to this software-defined future?
So I think it's going to take sort of two directions. So I think software is going to become more and more important, but I also think the combination of software with the right type of hardware infrastructure, the right type of appliance, is going to become more and more important, because I think there's a lot of people that sort of think, it's a bit like the cloudy world.
Sure.
People forget that the cloud is just somebody else's data center. So
other people's computers.
Other people's computers. Yeah, exactly. So I think that we're going to go with this sort of continued. The value is in the software. Things need to be programmable rather than configurable. They need to be way more simple, so that all this complexity of hardware is sort of masked from people taking our infrastructure. Stop saying people. Customers taking our infrastructure and delivering value against it. But I think they're going to continue to come back and realize they want purpose-built appliances in some way that really links the software value with a low-risk, simple infrastructure, if you want, of whatever type, in the data center, somebody else's data center.
Well, and having been on both sides of this fence in terms of starting your career as a network engineer and now being on the software side, on the storage side, are we ever going to tear down those walls? It feels like, some of what we're talking about involves breaking down those silos between traditional network, traditional storage to cross over and do something on a little bit larger plane. Do you think that software is the one ring to bind us all there?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you have to have it. So it almost feels a little bit simplistic to say that to me. It's less about is it software or hardware. It's more about what do people want to get out of that combination of the two. So it's for me, definitely the shift is away from wanting to get into the little widgets and all the things I used to do when I was an engineer, which is a long time ago, as Martin Cooper will remind everybody always. But I think it is getting more and more possible to break down those barriers. But it's going to be a long time before you can just buy one box or one cloud service and run everything in that exact same component or exact same way. I think.
But will we still be able to blame the network?
Yes, always. Always. Yeah, it's funny, when I used to work on the network, it was always the network's fault. And now I'm sort of not totally to do with networking, or quite a little way away from networking. It's still the network's fault. Yeah, so.
Well, it's good we've got some continuity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me.
And please join us next time when you're ready to make your tech confession on TechConfessions, theshow.com.